everyone, I'm Alma Angeles and you're watching NET25 World News. Here are tonight's top stories. Joe Biden faced tough questions about his mental fitness and electability during a TV interview as he attempts to recover from a lackluster debate performance that has led to calls for him to withdraw from the re-election bid. Newly elected Labour leader Keir Starmer begins his ambitious plan to rebuild Britain following his party's decisive election victory, ending 14 years of Conservative rule. Scorching temperatures are expected to persist across much of Japan today. And China's artificial intelligence sector exudes confidence, as evidenced by the recent World AI Conference in Shanghai. The event showcased cutting-edge products developed by a burgeoning group of talented young Chinese professionals, despite ongoing restrictions imposed by Western nations. President Joe Biden fended off questions about his mental fitness and electability on Friday in a TV interview meant to draw a line under a disastrous debate performance that triggered calls for him to quit his re-election bid. With rebellion brewing among some nervous Democratic voters, lawmakers and donors, the one-to-one with the ABC network was hyped as the most consequential of the 81-year-old president's long career. But the 22-minute sit-down appeared to provide little reassurance as Biden blamed sickness for his subpar performance and repeatedly dismissed polling and fears within his party that the debate had gravely wounded his prospects.
It was a bad episode. No indication of any serious condition. I was exhausted. I didn't listen to my instincts in terms of preparing, and I had a bad night. The whole way I prepared, nobody's fault, mine. Nobody's fault but mine. I prepared what I usually would do, sitting down, as I did come back with foreign leaders or the National Security Council, for explicit detail.
The interview was intended to help President Biden weather the storm, but his hoarse voice and meandering answers drew immediate Democratic fire for appearing out of touch. Asked if staying in the race might jeopardize Democrats holding on to the White House, this is what Biden said.
I don't think anybody's more qualified to be president or win this race than me.
And the Trump campaign mockingly posted on social media that Biden sounds great as the broadcast went out, before concluding the president, quote, is in denial and in decline. The interview came after Biden was hesitant and often incoherent during the debate against Trump in Atlanta, leading to panic within his party and calls for him to pull out of the race. Appearing at a campaign rally in Madison, Wisconsin, the president delivered an energetic stump speech, unequivocally declaring this.
Well, let me say this as clearly as I can. I'm staying in the race. I'll beat Donald Trump. I will beat him again in 2020. Well, by the way, we're going to do it again in 2024.
In Friday's interview, ABC host George Stephanopoulos repeatedly referenced the growing Democratic clamor for a conversation on picking a new candidate, asking Biden if he would step down if convinced he couldn't beat Trump.
I'm not going to answer that question. It's not going to happen.
And if you stay in and Trump is elected and everything you're warning about comes to pass, how will you feel in January?
I feel as long as I gave it my all and I did the goodest job as I know I can do. That's what this is about.
And he dismissed the idea that his poor performance was a sign of a more serious health problem.
I have a cognitive test every single day. Every day I have that test. Everything I do. You know, not only am I campaigning, but I'm running the world. And that's not how it sounds like hyperbole. But we are the essential nation in the world. Madeleine Albright was right. And every single day, for example, today, before I come out here, I'm on the phone with the Prime Minister of, well, anyway, I shouldn't get into detail, but with Netanyahu. I'm on the phone with the new Prime Minister of England.
Political analyst Aaron Call says Joe Biden could gracefully exit the stage in the coming days or weeks as pressure mounts on the U.S. president following his disastrous debate performance against Donald Trump.
There's a slew of new polls released today showing the gap between him and Donald Trump widening. Those who believe he should not run for a second term increasing up to about 80%. And so the President Biden and his team is putting on a very united front now. But certainly within the coming days or weeks, there's a chance that he could gracefully exit the stage.
Call also points out that polls show another candidate would not necessarily fare better.
That's the problem. Democrats are kind of stuck either way, whether they stick it out with Biden, 81-year-old candidate who performed poorly in the debate and may have another bad debate in September, or they pivot to someone new. There's also going to be problems there. And even a lot of the polling doesn't show that candidate faring much better than President Biden himself. I mean, it's really up to the party to kind of make that decision. Do you kind of go down with the sinking ship that may not have a great chance, but you kind of owe it to him because Biden has done it once and could technically have a comeback, or you kind of throw your lot with a new, younger candidate, maybe they could energize the younger voters, African Americans, Latinos, which are a big part of the Democratic base and constituency. And I think if they do that, it has to be Vice President Kamala Harris as politics, and he's kind of been discounted for his entire life and had a lot of low expectations and defied a lot of them. But you're asking a lot from someone who's 81 and be 86 by the time he left office. And no matter what he can do, he can't make himself any younger or change that perception of people having an issue with his age. And there are some things he could do at the margins. You could give speeches and interviews and press conferences. And if Donald Trump did agree to that second debate in September, if he had a much better debate performance, all those things would help. But it seems like
Newly elected Labour Prime Minister Keir Starmer will kickstart his plan to rebuild Britain on his first full day in charge Saturday after his party's landslide election win ended 14 years of Conservative rule. Starmer spent his first hours in Downing Street appointing his ministerial team, hours after securing centre-left Labour's return to power with a whopping 174-seat majority in the UK Parliament. He's expected to hold his first cabinet meeting today with Britain's first woman finance minister, Rachel Reeves, and new Foreign Secretary David Lammy in attendance. Reiterating his 5 key missions for government in his maiden speech, the 61-year-old vowed to get the state-run National Health Service back on its feet, ensure secure borders and safer streets. But daunting challenges await his government, including a stagnating economy, creaking public services, and households suffering from a years-long cost of living crisis.
You have given us a clear mandate, and we will use it to deliver change, to restore service and respect to politics, end the era of noisy performance, tread more lightly on your lives, and unite our country. 4 nations standing together again, facing down, as we have so often in our past, the challenges of an insecure world, committed to a calm and patient rebuilding in the mission of national renewal. Our work is urgent, and we begin it today. Thank you very much.
Iran's reformist candidate Masoud Pezeshkian on Saturday won a runoff presidential election against ultra-conservative Saeed Jalili, according to the Interior Ministry. Pezeshkian got more than 16 million votes and Jalili more than 13 million out of about 30 million cast votes, Electoral Authority spokesman Mohsen Eslami said, adding that voter turnout stood at 49.8%. The election, called early after the death of ultra-conservative President Ebrahim Raisi in a helicopter crash, followed the first round marked by a historically low turnout last week. Iran's Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, who wields ultimate authority, had called for a higher turnout in the runoff, emphasizing the importance of the election. Russian President Vladimir Putin said that he took seriously comments by U.S. presidential candidate Donald Trump that he could bring about a quick end to the fighting in Ukraine.
So, Russia would have never attacked. Israel would have never been attacked. The Ukraine situation is so horrible. The Israeli situation is so horrible, what's happened. And we're going to get them solved. We're going to get them solved very fast. I actually said...
Trump had said during a debate with President Joe Biden last week that if elected, he would have the conflict settled before he took office in January 2025. Putin added that he wasn't familiar with Trump's specific proposals to end the fighting now in its third year. Putin has always claimed to be open to talks on ending the conflict, though last month demanded Ukraine effectively capitulate as a precondition of a ceasefire.
Well, you know, the fact that Mr. Trump, as a presidential candidate, says that he's ready and wants to stop the war in Ukraine, we take that very seriously. Well, I haven't seen his ideas on how exactly he's going to do that, and that is the key question. But I have no doubt that he says that sincerely, and we support that.
Russian President Vladimir Putin told Viktor Orban that Ukraine must effectively capitulate if it wants peace, in a visit to Moscow by the Hungarian leader that triggered anger across the EU in Kiev. Now, Putin was hosting Orban, the friendliest leader in the EU, to Moscow for talks at the Kremlin, described by the Russian president as a really useful, frank conversation on the conflict in Ukraine. He repeated his demand that Ukraine withdraw all its troops from regions that Moscow has annexed and said Kiev was not ready to drop the idea of waging war until a victorious end.
Our peace initiatives were laid down quite recently during my meeting with the management of with leaders of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of the Russian Federation. And implementation of this initiative, as we think, would allow us to stop the hostilities and start negotiations. And it shouldn't be just a truce or a ceasefire. It shouldn't be just a pause that the Kiev regime could use to restock, to regroup, and rearm its troops. Russia stands for a complete and final settlement of the conflict. However, from the opposite side, we've been hearing about unwillingness to solve the matter in this way, and Ukraine's sponsors continue to try to use this country and its people as a ram, as a sacrifice against Russia. As we see it, the situation, considering the facts that we have heard today from Mr. Prime Minister, Kiev is still unwilling to give up the idea of fighting the war till the very end. In my view, the very thought of stopping the hostilities, the Kiev regime cannot admit, because this eliminates the pretext to maintain military situation in the country.
Orban, in turn, said he had realized positions are far apart between the two sides.
There are very little countries left that could be in dialogue with both conflicting parties, and Hungary is exactly one of those very few countries. And this is why, this week, I have visited Kiev, and now I am in Moscow. From my experience, I realized that the two positions are very far from each other, and we need to make a lot of steps to get closer to the end of the war. But the most important step has been made. We have established contact, and we will continue working in this direction. Thank you.
The visit came days after Hungary took over the EU's rotating presidency, and Putin told Orban he expected him to outline the position of European partners on Ukraine. But the Ukrainian government lambasted the meeting, stressing they had no hand in its planning. European Union leaders also lashed out at Orban. Appeasement will not Stop Putin, European Commission head Ursula von der Leyen wrote on X. Only unity and determination will pave the path to a comprehensive, just and lasting peace in Ukraine. EU Foreign Policy Chief Josep Borrell said in a statement that Orban's visit to Moscow takes place exclusively in the framework of the bilateral relations between Hungary and Russia. Orban has not received any mandate from the EU Council to visit Moscow, he added. NATO head Jens Stoltenberg said Orban had informed the alliance of his trip.
Hungary informed us about this upcoming visit, and I expect that when Viktor Orban is in Washington at the NATO summit next week, there will be opportunities to discuss and address the discussions he had in Moscow. This is something which takes place on a regular basis. Of course, Viktor Orban is not representing NATO at these meetings. He is representing his own country.
Scorching temperatures are set to continue across much of Japan today. The heat wave intensifies with highs exceeding 35 degrees Celsius forecast for many areas. Shizuoka City in central Japan could see a scorching 38 degrees. To combat the dangers of heat stroke, authorities have issued heat stroke alerts for a staggering 22 prefectures stretching from the Kanto region all the way down to Okinawa. The culprit behind this heat wave, a stubborn high-pressure system parked over the Pacific Ocean, blanketing western and eastern Japan in its warmth. And here's a breakdown of the expected highs. Nakatsu City in Oita Prefecture, a sweltering 37 degrees Celsius. Cities experiencing a scorching 36 degrees, Saitama, Kofu, Yamaguchi, Oita, Miyazaki, and Kagoshima. Feeling the heat with its 35 degrees. Ichinoseki City, Maebashi City, Central Tokyo, Osaka, Okayama, Hiroshima, Matsuyama, and Fukuoka. The Japan Meteorological Agency and the Environment Ministry are urging residents to take precautions, and this includes avoiding strenuous exercise, unnecessary outings, and staying cool by using air conditioning effectively. Now, China is facing a summer of extremes, brutal heat waves in the north and devastating floods in the south. This is fueled by rising global temperatures, according to the country's weather service. Now, it predicts temperatures 1 to 2 degrees Celsius above normal across central and eastern China. And this comes despite China being the world's biggest emitter of greenhouse gases. While China aims for carbon neutrality by 2060, officials are hesitant to directly link emissions to extreme weather. June saw record-breaking heat and the fourth highest number of high-temperature days since 1961. Parts of the north sweltered above 40 degrees Celsius, while eastern provinces faced massive flooding. The situation highlights the urgency of climate action as China grapples with the consequences of a warming planet. The European Union has imposed additional provisional duties of up to 38% on Chinese electric car imports due to what it sees as unfair state subsidies provided by Beijing to Chinese electric vehicle manufacturers.
What the EU wishes for is a solution. It is not the introduction of tariffs. The introduction of tariffs is not an objective per se. It is a means to correct an imbalance, an unfair competitive situation to the detriment of producers of electric vehicles in the EU compared to those who are producing vehicles in China.
The European Commission's investigation found that these subsidies were undercutting European rivals, impacting their transition from traditional to electric power. And this move has caused divided opinions within the European Union, with Germany voicing concern about potential negative consequences for its significant trade with China.
The industry also made quite clear statements that tariffs, as suggested now by the EU, will not increase the competitiveness of the automotive industry. And therefore, we rather advocate for investing into the competitiveness of the European Union rather on trying to protect the auto industry. And I mean, you cannot protect the automotive industry only in the European Union if they are all over the world in all global markets. So this will not.
We also believe that these visits help to discuss areas of difference of opinion, of trade conflicts, for example, and that any kind of trade conflict obviously is also hampering businesses and is also hampering businesses on all sides.
German automaker giant Volkswagen and BMW have criticized the tariffs, while France and Italy have advocated for them. The provisional tariffs will take effect from Friday, with definitive duties expected to come into force in November for a 5-year period, pending a vote by the EU's 27 states. The tariffs will impact electric cars manufactured in China, including the Tesla Model 3, electric Mini, and Volvo EX40, as well as non-Chinese branded cars made in China. Tesla, which manufactures in China, has requested its own duty rate based on evidence it has submitted, and a spokesperson indicated that prices for the Model 3 may increase in the short term. China's electric vehicle leader BYD inaugurated a factory in Rayong, Thailand with an annual capacity of 150,000 vehicles. And this move represents BYD's global expansion amidst a market slowdown and impending tariffs from the European Union on Chinese electric vehicle firms. Initially focusing on full electric vehicles, the plant plans to later expand to include plug-in hybrids. Thailand aims for 30% of its car production to be EVs by 2030 and has offered tax breaks to incentivize this shift. BYD, which surpassed Tesla as the world's top seller of electric vehicles in 2023, remains optimistic about its expansion and intends to establish a second factory in the European Union. Although BYD achieved a record annual profit of 30 million yuan or $4.1 billion last year, it reported lower than expected revenue for the first quarter of 2024. As the global leader in the electric vehicle market, China aims for nearly 1 in 3 cars on its roads to be electric by 2030. And while the EU has proposed provisional tariff hikes on Chinese manufacturers, including BYD, to protect European manufacturers from cheaper imports, the proposed tariffs are lower than those recently imposed by the United States. Meanwhile, Indonesia inaugurated its first electric vehicle battery plant, signaling the country's intent to solidify its position in the global electric vehicle supply chain. President Joko Widodo highlighted this milestone as Southeast Asian nations seek to establish themselves in the emerging electric vehicle industry. The plant, established through a joint venture between South Korean firms Hyundai Motor Group and LG Energy Solution, is capable of producing up to 10 gigawatt hours of battery cells annually. And this facility, located in the West Javan town of Karawang, is touted as the largest of its kind in Southeast Asia. As part of a $9.8 billion deal signed in 2020 between Indonesia and LG, the plant will manufacture batteries for Hyundai's electric vehicles, including an anticipated 50,000 Kona electric SUVs powered by the Indonesian-made battery.
Dan saya yakin bahwa kompetisi kita dengan negara-negara lain akan bisa kita menangkan karena tambangnya ada di sini, nikelnya ada di sini, bauksit-nya ada di sini, tembaganya ada di sini, ada smelter.
The joint venture company PTHLI Green Power plans to invest $2 billion to increase the plant's capacity to 20 GWh or gigawatts. Now, Hyundai Motor Group's executive chairman Yusin Chong expressed optimism about the potential for Indonesia's electric vehicle industry to generate new economic opportunities.
무엇보다도 현대자동차그룹과 인도네시아가 아시아뿐만 아니라 전 세계적으로 전기차 생태계의 미래를 함께 만들어 나가고 있음을 의미합니다.
China's artificial intelligence sector is brimming with confidence, according to a major tech conference held this week in Shanghai. The World AI Conference showcased cutting-edge products developed by a growing pool of young Chinese talent, despite ongoing restrictions imposed by Western nations. Generative AI, a technology that uses AI to create content like illustrations and computer code, is experiencing explosive growth in China, and the UN reports that China leads the world in patent filings for this technology. At the conference, attendees were treated to demonstrations of these capabilities. One exhibit displayed realistic AI-generated watercolors and science fiction illustrations. Another featured a troupe of humanoid robots developed by a consortium of Chinese organizations. Ethan Duan, an intern at a tech startup, believes China's success hinges on attracting global talent and developing its own independent products.
If companies in China can have a lot of policies which would encourage talents to gather from the world to develop their own independent product, then I would say it was definitely real, and I would say the limitations would not be that harsh. But I would say a sudden cut of access to API would definitely possess some challenge to many corporations right now. But it's still too far too early to say if it's going to also be a challenge after 1 year.
Theo Kansi, a marketing professional, offered a geopolitical perspective.
It makes sense to me what the US is doing because China is doing the same thing over here. And when they block ChatGPT here, for example, it makes sense because it's very hard to the US for them to develop their technologies if only Chinese technologies over there. And China is doing the same thing over here. When they block GPT, they are focusing, okay, my LLMs have to develop.
Finally, in our news, director Sean Levi and actors Hugh Jackman and Ryan Reynolds made a memorable appearance in Seoul, South Korea during a red carpet event to promote their highly anticipated film, Deadpool Wolverine. And this visit marked Hugh Jackman's sixth and Ryan Reynolds' return to Korea since their promotion of Deadpool 2 in 2018, highlighting the special connection they have with their Korean fans. The tour was filled with public engagements, emphasizing the strategic significance of the Korean market for global film promotions. With the film's release in Korea scheduled for July 24, 2 days ahead of its US debut, the excitement surrounding the movie has reached new heights, and the actors also graced a red carpet event and hosted a special screening of the film, providing fans with an unforgettable experience and intensifying the anticipation for the upcoming release.
I love it. I also, this
came out. I am so thrilled to be back playing a role that I didn't think I would play again, but I embrace it with all my heart, and I've never been happier playing the role, and I've never been prouder of a Wolverine movie or a movie where Wolverine is in it than this one. And I'm so excited for you to discover it and discover sides of the character we have not explored before.
And so getting to do this movie again, it just reaffirms that, it's sticking to something and really believing in something, getting to be on a set where we're making this a Deadpool and Wolverine movie. It's not something that just fans have wanted to see for over a decade or more. It's something that we've wanted to do for just as long. So.
Korea's always embraced Hugh's films, Ryan's films, my films, and this is our first one with the three of us together. And it was built for global audiences to enjoy in the cinemas, and we're just a few weeks away for you to have that experience. So we're happy to share it with you.
Like the absolute best part of my job, and the part that I will never ever take for granted, is the gift of coming to countries like Korea and spending time here, but not just doing fancy interviews and press conferences, but really having that opportunity that we get to build in to go and experience some of the culture and some of what makes this place so special to Koreans.
Thanks for watching. I'm Alma Angeles for NET25 World News. Stay tuned for more updates and in-depth coverage of global events. Remember to follow us on our social media channels and visit our website for the latest news. Have a good night.